Hey, what's up, guys? Live here from beautiful Ohio, Buckeye MTB, first ever live stream. We're going to read fan mail live on the air, answer questions from viewers just like you. Whatever you want to know as we go through here throughout the live stream, if you want to put it in the chat, I can answer questions in the chat, and we can do it live. We'll go from there. All right. First question, first letter here today from Wendy in Carthage, New York. She writes. Why do you wear a specialized helmet when you only ride Walmart bikes? Wow, great question, Wendy, and good catch. Here's my helmet. I don't think a lot of viewers maybe even picked up on that, but good catch, Wendy, and thanks for the question. So, actually, a pretty good story with this specialized bike helmet that I wear when I'm riding. I always ride with a helmet. It's not just to be ironic because I ride Walmart bikes. Actually, a pretty good story to it. So, back about 9 years ago, 2016, I decided I was going to get back into cycling. So, I did what any reasonable, responsible person would do. I went on Craigslist and found the absolute cheapest bike that I could find. So, the cheapest bike I found was a department store bike covered in spray paint, cost me $15. So I met a guy in the mall parking lot and bought that and began to ride it around. And I used that to commute on. At the time, I was living in Ashland, Kentucky. I commuted from Ashland, Kentucky to Huntington, West Virginia, where I worked at the time, about a 14-mile one way commute. Worked out okay. I made it probably about 50 miles total on that bike. And on my third day commuting to work, about halfway between uh, where I lived and where I was going to work, I was going to cross the street. And as I was crossing the street, I got up on my pedals and gave like a powerful pedal stroke to kind of to move across the street quickly. And as soon as I did that, the crank arm literally sheared off. It didn't come unbolted. The bolt didn't break. The crank arm itself, the metal actually failed and was fatigued and sheared off. I tried to ride and pedal with one side. It isn't really possible. So I was kind of pushing that bike as I went. I was right in the middle. So I was like 7 miles from work, which is not a good situation to be in at like 6:30 in the morning. So I just continued walking to work. I tried to get on Uber, see if I could find anybody on my phone. There were no vehicles close by. Didn't want to call anybody early in the morning and wake them up. Luckily, on my way to work, I was passed by one of my coworkers who saw me. They stopped to allow me to throw my bike in the back of their SUV and give me a ride the rest of the way to work. So, a pretty interesting story. I got to work. I had this broken department store bike. Um, that there was no way I could get home, but it's how I got to work. So I had to come up with another method. Right across the street from where I worked in Huntington, West Virginia, there's a bike shop. So huge shout out to them, Jeff's Bike Shop in Huntington, West Virginia. If you're down in Huntington, I recommend you check them out. They're a specialized dealer. Now they probably have other things, but a real great bike shop. So when I got done with work for the day, I walked across the street to the bike shop, pushing my department store bike. So I needed to find a bike to get home with. So I started taking a look at the bikes they had and saw the bike that I had. They didn't want to take it, but I convinced the guy to take it in on a trade-in, even though he resisted it greatly. As you all know, department store bikes is something that's universally hated by bike shops. But he finally agreed to take it and said he was going to give it to some guy who fixed up bikes to give away to kids. So I traded in my busted department store bike, and I found off the used rack a specialized Ale road bike, and looked like it was pretty fast. I rode around the parking lot for a little bit. So I ended up through haggling and negotiation for that used bike off the rack. Ended up getting a helmet that he threw in the mix. I got this specialized bike helmet here that went with my used specialized Ale book bike. Actually, I called it Ales for years until I figured out that it's actually pronounced Ale. So I hopped on that. Couldn't believe how much faster it was than my rickety old department store bike that had failed in the middle of a commute. But I rode that bike home, and it was great. A great bike, great on the roads, very fast, very great at hill climbing. So I rode that for years. Used it primarily for commuting, longer road rides. at the time that I lived there. I will say on longer rides though, it eventually started to get to me because a road bike like that with no suspension and skinny tires, sure it's fast, but I started to realize my hands would go numb on longer rides after a time. Also, it's just not that comfortable. I used it for commuting for several years, not just when I lived in Kentucky, but later on when I lived in Omaha, Nebraska. I didn't have a car for a time, and that was my main commuting vehicle was that bike. I had a little bit longer commute. I would do like 30 miles in a day, go to where I worked downtown Omaha, go out to University of Nebraska, Omaha campus, riding through town there, and then ride it on the bike trails back home. It was a great bike, but if you accidentally hit a pothole or something that wasn't smooth, it like almost rattled your teeth out of your bones. It was a very harsh feel and harsh ride, especially on long rides. And if you're off of like paved and real nice areas, it could be just pretty jarring to ride. So I used that for a long time, for several years, and I wore that same helmet that went with that. So I will say one thing, a little bit different commuting instances. When I was in Kentucky, West Virginia, that was probably one of the most terrifying places you can try to commute on a bicycle. Lots of hills, lots of traffic that's not geared towards pedestrians or vehicles at all. And I found a lot of times the drivers were really hostile towards bicycles. I had big dump trucks, seemed like at times they tried to hit me with their mirrors almost. I had diesel trucks pull up alongside me and just start revving it up, rolling coal, throwing out big black smoke towards me. Just not very friendly towards cyclists at all. I didn't let that deter me because if I was out early in the mornings, it was super nice, super cool and peaceful to be riding along some of the roads along the Ohio River. Really nice experience in the morning, and in different areas, different parts of town in Huntington or in Ashland, especially when you're along the river there. Um, it could be a pretty nice ride. It was really the transition points, like an example, crossing the bridges on the Ohio River. Very treacherous, especially if there's traffic, and if you do it at a time where there's a lot of traffic, it can be just downright terrifying. Let me give you an example, just how the community in general is not really geared towards cycling. The infrastructure really isn't. Even though I think there's a lot of potential there, I just think the community is not ready for it. Even though I think it could be great. So here's an example. A small community close by, right along the Ohio River, Russell, Kentucky. There is a bridge there where you could get over to the Ohio side of the river in Ironton, Ohio. So I used to ride on that bridge. There was an old truss metal bridge that had these metal grates. It had a pedestrian walkway and there were wider shoulders, so you could ride across it. It was a little unnerving riding on metal grates on a bicycle with tires, but you could tell it was geared for. They understood pedestrians and bicycles may need to cross from there. So that bridge was reaching end of life and needed to be replaced. They replaced it with a brand new suspension bridge in that location. And the new bridge had no pedestrian lane, no bicycle lane, no provision for any pedestrians or manual traffic to get across. And the speed limit was like 55 miles an hour. So it went from something 100 years ago was geared towards, you know, what we think of as a modern design geared towards pedestrians and being friendly to pedestrians and cyclists, to something that was not geared towards them at all. That really just focused on uh, big semi truck traffic, industry traffic, and really no provision, not even an afterthought for cyclists or pedestrians at all. Basically, they don't want them there. And kind of my theory, I think part of it is it's related to kind of how that community's been impacted over the years. Historically, it was heavy in the coal and steel industries. Those have kind of fallen away, even though a lot of people look to those and think that someday they're going to come back. The area is also hit pretty heavily with the opioid epidemic. So when you see somebody on a bicycle, or somebody walking around that's associated more with those nefarious type people living out on the streets, more than someone just being out there on a bicycle for their health. So that's kind of the way it is. But just to give an example, but that didn't actually stop me from commuting. I commuted occasionally, not every day. Sometimes I would take a break, but I commute that trip from work there, Ashland to Huntington. It's really nice in the morning. It was really only dicey on the way home after work. And then as I was getting out of the military and leaving there, because I worked with Corps of Engineers at that time, I moved out to Omaha, Nebraska, sold my vehicle, and I was primarily a bicycle commuter at that time. I know if you look at ratings for uh, which states get the highest ratings for being cycle friendly. Nebraska is at the bottom of the list, but I would say that is was not my experience at all. Especially if you're in the Omaha metro area, there's a huge amount of bicycle trails everywhere. There's huge levee systems throughout the entire city that protect everything, and there's a bike trail route along basically every single levee system has a bike trail on the top of it to allow you to get through the city. It doesn't necessarily follow the ways or direction that you want to go. You can mix that in with city streets, but there's quite a few bike trails to choose from and ways to get out of traffic. And you can commute there. I was commuting about 300 miles a month on my bicycle when I lived in Omaha through the winter, snow, slush, and everything else, and it was pretty good for a while. I will say what really ended my road biking and ended or caused me to get into mountain biking was not really the traffic; it was the wind. If you ever been to the Great Plains or any place like Nebraska, Kansas, South Dakota, there's fierce winds that go through there. There's not a lot of trees. It's super windy. A lot of times it can be cold wind, but even warm wind just pulls your energy away and slows you down when you're cycling. So part of the reason the wind is so bad, at least in my opinion, from what I saw there, is it's a windy place in general. But that great network of bicycle trails that they have all along the levees, they're on the top of the levees. So it's like the highest point out there. You don't really have any cover from the wind at all. There's no trees. You're by a creek. You're on top of a levee on a bike path, and then that wind just is brutal. You feel like you're not moving at all when you're riding. So it kind of, at least for me, took a lot of the fun out of riding on a paved bike path or cycling, because it at times it could look just like a video game. You look off in the distance. There's not a lot of trees to gauge how far you need to go. There's a brutal wind always kind of slowing you down, and that kind of was kind of limiting how much I wanted to cycle for fun at that point. I eventually got into mountain biking, which one of the best kept, I guess, hidden secrets. Most of the parks around Omaha, even going into Iowa, there's some outstanding mountain biking trails there. Pretty good mountain biking community, always building new trails, and it's growing. And you get down in the trees in the forest, you get out of that wind and don't have to deal with that. So that was one of the reasons at the time that I got into mountain biking and really liked it. But thanks for the question, Wendy. And that is why I wear a specialized helmet to this day. All right, we'll go on to the next question here. We got this question from Ricky B in DuPont, Washington. He writes, "Why don't you get a good bike? What do you have against real bike brands?" Oh, thanks for the question, Ricky. Um, actually, don't have anything against good bike brands. If you just listen to my story that I just went through there, I just explained when I got back into cycling after a department store bike, I rode a specialized bike for a long time on the roads. So I don't have anything against them. I thought it was a great bike at the time. Um, but at the end of the day, I buy what I buy and ride um, what I ride. I have fun just kind of messing around with stuff. I like to tinker with things and work on things. So I've enjoyed, taking these department store bikes, a Ozark Trail bike, seeing what it can do and what it's capable of. But I don't really have anything against any of the bike brands. They're just companies. I don't tie them with my identity or anything like that. Um, so Specialized Trek, any of you guys, if you guys want to sponsor me, I'd be more than happy to ride one of your bikes. Have no issues with that. Same with Jones Bikes, you know, Surly, a lot of the different brands. I don't have anything against them. I'd ride any of them. I'm not really a gear snob, or I don't have my identity tied to any of those brands. So I'd also say Walmart Ozark Trail. if you're watching this, don't take it for granted. Just because I'm riding an Ozark Trail bike right now, doesn't mean it's going to stay that way. So if you want to work out a deal, we can do that. But I ride what I ride. I don't have anything against any of it. But thanks for the question, Ricky. That's a good question. All right, moving on. Kimberly W. from Darlington, Pennsylvania writes, "How'd you get on the Ozark Trail Factory Racing team? What are some other pro riders on the factory team?" Kimberly, thanks for the question. Actually, I got on Ozark Trail Factory Racing Team because I just made it up. I just made it up myself. I thought it was kind of funny because typically people scoff at riding or even especially racing anything like a department store bike that's a house brand like Ozark Trail. I just thought it was kind of funny, so I just started wearing the shirt. I've got questions at races like, "Hey, Ozark Trail Factory Racing, what is that?" I've even got comments on some of my videos like, "Wow, that's great. The pro team showed up." But as of right now, there's no other pro riders on the factory team, and I guess it's an unofficial team. And I don't know that I'm actually a pro rider. I don't get paid for this. I kind of do this for fun, so yeah, it's kind of what it is right now. But right now, I'm only on the team. As I mentioned before, there is the Ozark Trail Factory Racing jersey. I had that made up just once again, just because I thought it was funny and wanted to do it and wear it. But I did make a short a while back that once I hit 500 subscribers and YouTube allows me to set up my own merch store, factory store, I'm going to put those Ozark Trail Factory Race Team jerseys available so you can pick up your own. And Kimberly, if you want to be on the Ozark Trail Factory Race Team, you can be on the unofficial Ozark Trail Factory Race Team as well. But thanks for the question. It's a great one, something we have fun with here on the channel. Okay, moving on to the next question here. We've got Debbie T from Brumley, Missouri. She writes, "Your channel makes no sense. Forgotten Ohio, no one cares. Mountain bike racing, department store bikes, cold plunging, question mark." Well, Debbie, thanks for the letter. You say no one cares, but I guess you cared enough to send me a letter. So just in general, just to kind of explain the channel, I live here in Ohio. So I do what I do. I'm not getting paid to do this right now. I do this for fun. And I just bring you guys along for the ride. I do what I think are to me interesting things. I like mountain biking. And if you're watching this, you probably like mountain biking as well. So I assume that maybe you like some of the other things that I do as well. They kind of go together. If not, that's okay. You don't have to watch it. I just bring you guys along for the ride on stuff that I do and stuff that I think's cool. I'm not a robot. I know the algorithm rewards niching down and finding your niche. But I do other things. I do other things than just ride bikes. I think there's a lot of overlap, especially like cold plunging for recovery and things like that. One example, I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu as well. I train that a couple days a week. I haven't put any Jiu Jitsu videos on the channel here, but I may in the future. It sounds unrelated, but I think there's actually quite a bit of overlap. If you're familiar with the Diaz brothers from the UFC, they're black belts in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. The way they train for their fights is they do triathlons. They do um, bike rides, they do Ironmans, all sorts of stuff like that. And Nate Diaz actually said at one point that the only reason he still fights is so he can continue to race. So I think there's overlap there. And, I think cross training is important, whether that's splitting firewood or doing jujitsu or anything else. Um, so you don't just have puny cyclist arms. It's good to be overall healthy and well rounded if you're doing biking for fitness. So there are some things I don't include on YouTube that I like to do here. Don't want to risk demonetization. Not that I'm actually monetized or anything, but if it ever gets to that point. So if you ever want to see the fully uncensored version of anything we're talking about or doing here, if I have to allude to something, you can check me out on Rumble. I also have a channel on Rumble as well, same name. But yeah, appreciate the criticism and thanks for the letter, Debbie. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move on to our next letter here. I don't see anything in the chat. No questions in the chat, so I guess we'll continue with fan mail. Kyle H. from Cotopaxi, Colorado. How do you keep yourself safe? Seems like you go to some pretty dangerous areas sometimes, like East Cleveland, some of these other places. Hey, thanks for the question, Kyle. So I'll say urban exploration and exploring some of these kind of off the wall places. You've seen some of my recent videos in East Cleveland, the Sideway Bridge, the Hillendale Bridge. A lot of these different things, Latonia Beehive, coke ovens, a lot of those different things. I've always kind of been fascinated with that. Really, since I would say about 20 years ago, when I was freshman in college down in Cincinnati. I met up with some guys and we found out about the Cincinnati subway, the abandoned Cincinnati subway. In the 1920s, they started to build a subway underneath Cincinnati. That subway was abandoned in the Great Depression and never completed, but there's like 6 miles of subway and train stations completely sealed up that you can get into. There's also it was retrofitted eventually for like a bomb shelter during the Cold War. And if you can find the way into it, you can see all those things down there. It was pretty fascinating. And, after that, it kind of made me wonder what else is out there. It's always kind of almost like looking into a time machine, fascinated by some of the stuff from the past you can take a look at. When I was in college, I'd also go into some other neighborhoods. At the time, over the Rhine, OTR was actually a pretty dangerous place. Um, not like it is today, where it's all like craft brews and fancy restaurants and bars. But it was like open air drug market, super dangerous when I went to college in there in the early 2000s. But I still like want to explore those areas. And it was kind of an interesting thing and just kind of kept my interest since then. So what do I do to be safe in those areas? So a lot of times I go alone, but I'll say that it's good to take a friend with you. Don't go alone. Bring somebody with you so you're not by yourself. That's a good first step. But one thing that I focus on, I kind of treat it like a mission or an operation when I'm going to some of these places. So I spent, a little over a decade in the military. So I kind of look at it like that to try to keep myself safe and have very specific things that I'm going to go look at and see. So I find out what time is BMNT. If you don't know what BMNT is, it's the beginning of morning nautical twilight. It's that first little bit of sunlight when you can first see outside and you can see to get around. It's not dark anymore. Um, Usually, people that have been out all night are starting to wind down at that time. People who have woken up or getting up to start their day normally haven't even gotten up yet, or if they have, they've just barely started. So I try to do all of my exploration and things like that around BMNT. It's really the safest time to be out anywhere. If you notice, pay attention to the news. Any of those no knock raids and search warrants, there's a reason police choose those times of the morning. It's because people are generally unaware and they can get in and have the highest chance of getting somewhere without running into any issues. You start doing stuff if you want to see when crimes and dangerous things happen, you always see it's like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning or after 10 o'clock at night. That's probably the most dangerous time to be out. But BMNT, you're not really encountering very many people out there. It's generally pretty quiet, the quietest time that you're going to find in a neighborhood, and you minimize the amount or the chance that you're going to run into any issues. Also, plan my route ahead of time. I use Google Maps. I figure out where exactly I want to go, things I want to see. I plan out where I'm going to park, make sure I can park somewhere that's far enough away, but not too far, but somewhere where I'm going to be comfortable leaving my car. And when I plan my route, I keep moving. I don't loiter in some of these areas. I check them out. I get footage, video, see what I want to see, and then keep moving. So I move pretty fast. I see exactly what I want to see, and then I get out there and keep going. If something feels off, don't be afraid to back out. It's okay to change your mind, say, all right, I'm going to check this out on another day, or I'm going to go get my friend and then come back later. If it doesn't seem right, that's fine to trust your instincts there. I normally fly a solo myself. I move pretty fast, move faster alone, to quote Chuck Norris in any number of 80s movies. But bring someone with you if it helps you feel better. Also, focus on controlling like the space and distance around you. So don't get in any sort of alleyways where you're blocked in. Don't go in any buildings where you don't have an egress route. Even if you're going to go in a parking lot, make sure you always kind of keep your head on a swivel and you know how that you can get out at the end of a street or a cut through general on a bicycle. That's pretty easy. Don't let anybody grab a hold of your bicycle or get close enough where they could grab your handlebars where you can't move. Control your space and distance around you. So with that, it involves like not going into buildings, even though it can be kind of tempting. You can come around a corner in a building and be on top of somebody that you don't want to be on. So it makes it difficult to control your space if you're exploring these areas in abandoned buildings. So I don't go into those buildings. I explore. If I can ride through, I will, and then just kind of keep my distance. So, like I was saying, looking at it like the military, treating it like an operation. If they're going to clear any rooms, if you're doing any building clearing or room clearing, they at a minimum have 3-to-1 odds to do that. It takes one defender for every three people to go in to a building. So, thinking of those odds, there's no one person room clearing. There's no one person building clearing. So, if you're not in a big group of people, I would avoid it. I also say good morning to everybody when I'm out there. You don't see a lot of people early in the morning, and you can really scare people if you're coming through fast on a bike. Not something I want to do. So I say good morning to alert them to my presence, and then also let them know that I see them. So it's just kind of a good thing to do, and it's a nice thing to do. If you see somebody out early in the morning, say good morning to them. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm going to get into maybe some other stuff that this is based on my experience and my experience only. So take it for what it's worth. So I would say realize that you're on your own when you're out there. Like the police are not going to help you if you go in some of these like bad neighborhoods or places that you're not really supposed to be. Best case, they're going to be annoyed that you're there. Worst case, they're going to be hostile towards you. They may even give you a hard time. So let me give you a story to kind of explain some background on this and when I first noticed this. So I went to college in Cincinnati. I was a criminal justice student. And part of that is my senior year. You do like 80 hours of ride alongs with the police department, Cincinnati Police Department. So I did ride alongs with them. And it was a pretty common thing that, a lot of people don't go downtown unless they're going for like a sporting event or something like that. We had people that were going to the Bengals game, Cincinnati Bengals game, people coming from the suburbs. It was a pretty common thing after a Bengals game. You have someone that came from the suburbs, thought that they were going to go to OTR and score some drugs or something like that. So they would go down there, they would get jumped or robbed, they would get their Jeep stolen, they get beat up, and then they would call the police and expect them to do something for it. So this is a pretty common thing. And normally, when they first called the police, they were expecting help. And that's immediately what the police thought. Hey, you were down here to buy drugs. You kind of had what you kind of had it coming to you. You shouldn't have been down here in the first place. And I saw this firsthand play out when you go interact with these people. And that was the first thing the police said to him. It didn't take long, a minute or two, before they admitted what they were doing out there, and it was additional work for them. So, you stand out if you don't live in these areas, in these neighborhoods. People are going to realize that you don't belong around there. And they're going to, look at you suspiciously. They're going to think, hey, this guy's down here to cause trouble. He's down here to buy drugs or do something else illegal. So keep that in mind. They're not going to look at you like you're just some guy on a bicycle or a YouTuber or something like that. They're going to be like, "Why are you down here?" And most of your explanations, they're probably not going to believe you. So keep that in mind. Best case, they're going to be annoyed you're down there, and they're saying, you ain't from around there. So it goes into the same thing like talking about like defending yourself or something like that. Absolutely a last resort. If you can get away, get away. Avoid any confrontation possible. Because there's the same thing I was saying about the police being skeptical. Why are you even down here? If you do, forbid you do have to defend yourself from somebody there. It's pretty easy for a prosecutor or anybody to paint the picture like, hey, you're down here just looking for trouble. You shouldn't have been here in the first place. And I think we all know how it turns out on the news. Um, you know, Whoever it is, their whole family comes out and talks about what a great person they were. So just keep that in mind. At the end of the day, it's still better to be judged by 12 than carried by 6. But keep in mind that you're going to have an uphill battle trying to explain why you're there and kind of what you're even doing there. So let me show you what I carry with me. Actually, this is kind of it's a Hill People Gear chest rig. It's from there's a company out in Colorado makes these, and it's has MOLLE attachments. You can put what you want. I've got a multi tool on here. It carries a lot of the things that I need. This is just a pretty basic Gerber multi tool here. I've also got a flashlight that I carry here, and pretty basic stuff. It also makes it look like, when you come riding through with a GoPro and a chest rig on, that's also something that is not commonly seen in these neighborhoods. If there is somebody nefarious, they may give you a double look and be like, "Is that a cop or what's going on?" They're probably not going to mess with you, but it's going to draw attention, and I've noticed that. Um, and like I was saying, I want to get in there and get out quickly, get whatever footage I need to, but also keeping myself safe. So the things that I keep here to keep myself safe, normally I'll carry a tourniquet with me, and then I have this quick clot combat gauze or dressing. It's actually if you know something serious did happen, you had say, and this emergency bandage here. If something did happen, you got shot or stabbed or had you got hit by a car, any sort of massive injury, you can treat something like that and prevent you from bleeding out, so you can get out of the area and get somewhere safer. So I'm not going to be worried about treating every little bump and scrape and boo boo and things that I might have when I'm out there. Just, stuff that's going to cause me to bleed out that could be very serious. I want to be able to throw on a tourniquet. I want to be able to stop bleeding so I don't completely bleed out. But I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to worry about the other stuff when I get back to my vehicle and then get out of there. So some people say this is overkill. I mean, you're not going in a combat zone. You're just going in a neighborhood that may have seen better days. Even a gang area. It's not like there's like trained fighters or militia or dangerous things like that. Some people will say it's overkill, but I mean, it doesn't really weigh anything. I can just carry that with me. It gives me a little bit extra peace of mind. But it's really up to you. You need to do your um, own risk assessment, see if you're comfortable going with what you have or what. So it's kind of up to you, but that's what I do to keep myself safe. And thanks for the question, Kyle. It's a good question. But ultimately, it's going to come up to what you're comfortable with and in what areas you are. So, like I mentioned there, not going in any sort of war zones or anything like that. However, I have heard that in Ukraine, particularly in Western Ukraine, there's some pretty good mountain bike trails. So I may consider in the future sometime taking a look at something like that. Um, but as of now, yeah, just around close to home and looking at what we've got. So let's see. Let's see. We have any questions in the chat coming in? No questions in the chat. We've got one more letter we'll go through. This is from Donnie B. in Hazard, Kentucky. He writes, I heard you're in the military for a long time. Why don't you ever talk about it? Well, good question, Donnie. Why I was in the military for a little over a decade. It's a big chunk of time. Uh, it's definitely a key part of my past, but the main reason I don't talk about it a lot on the channel is nobody wants to hear it. Be honest with you, I made a few videos talking some of the stories, some of the more, at least what I thought to me were more interesting stories, but nobody really watched them. So I mean, if there's interest, I can tell a story, but it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of interest. And also the way the algorithm works on YouTube and the way that works is it rewards certain niches. So I focused on mountain biking and biking in general, exploring some forgotten Ohio stuff also by bicycle. So it doesn't really fit with the channel. And I did experiment with a little bit of it, like how I experiment with some different topics like cold plunging and stuff on the channel. But it didn't really resonate with viewers and not a lot of people watched it. So I kind of just decided I would just not produce any more of those videos. Um, but Donnie, because you asked, I actually do have one story that I was meaning to tell. It's probably the wildest story, which since you asked, I'll go ahead and talk it here on the live stream. Probably the wildest story that I've ever had happen to me in the entire time I was in the military. It's the most bizarre thing. Like I don't know a way to describe it. As other than just to tell you what happened and let you form your own conclusions. There isn't it isn't really like, hey, I'm a super tough guy story, but it's definitely a story where it's like definitely a split decision, one way or the other could have resulted in dying on the spot, and then grave consequences across the board. I'll tell this story just because it's so bizarre. I feel like it needs to be told, and you asked Donnie, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell it. So to give some backdrop, so I deployed, several times to Afghanistan, once to Iraq, but my first Afghan deployment, I was a route clearance platoon leader, which is where you go on missions, removing explosives and bombs and things like that from the roads, so convoys can get through there. So as a platoon leader, I had like 40 soldiers that worked for me, that reported to me, and we would go on these missions. Um, so it there came a new rule about where every mission we went on, we had to partner with the Afghans. So they weren't on the same base we were, but they had these little outposts that were all over the place. You'd see them along the road. They were supposed to be protecting the road. So basically, when we left our base, we would stop at the first Afghan base there, do a link up with them, and then have them go on a mission with us, and we would complete our mission that way. And that was a requirement for us. It was kind of a newer requirement, but it's something we started to do. Um, let me give you actually a little bit more background on Afghanistan in general, to help this story maybe make a little bit more sense. This is well documented, and I'm not trying to be pejorative about the country there, the people there, but it's kind of essential for understanding kind of the environment that you're in. So Afghanistan is a very strict Islamic country, very strict religious country. But one of the many paradoxes of that country is, despite that, um, drug use and drug abuse is very common. They grow lots of opium, or at least at the time they did, their opium poppies, which are precursors for heroin. You see hashish everywhere, marijuana. They smoke it. They get high before they go on missions with us. It was a common thing. So, in addition to the drug use, also homosexuality and pedophilia are also parts that are ingrained parts of the culture. This isn't my opinion. This is well documented from other people who have been out over there, and I feel like it's important to understand the story. So one of these missions, go out on base on our normal mission. We go to the first Afghan outpost along our route. I hop out with my interpreter. We've done this before, so it wasn't really a big deal. And I'm just walking up to the gate with my interpreter, and we're going to link up with our commander and get a vehicle that's going to go with us on our patrol on our mission. So I'm there. There's nobody at the gate. There's somebody in the guard shack that's like yelling for somebody. They're motioning for somebody. And when I say guard shack, like the tower on the wall there, um, it's taking a while for anyone to show up. There's like nobody there except the people in the towers. I'm staying there with my interpreter trying to figure out what's going on. Then all of a sudden, I see this Afghan commander walking up with this guy in civilian clothes, and it's like they're like adjusting themselves like they did not have clothes on or something like that. Like they were doing something to each other. I don't want to speculate, but it was definitely some kind of your jokes about like man love Thursday or whatever. It was something like that, and they come walking up to us. It was very odd. Like I see the guy like tightening his belt, walking towards me. I'm standing there with my interpreter at the gate of this base. The guy in civilian clothes walks up front, in front of the Afghan commander, who's hanging a little ways back. As he goes up, he reaches to grab my crotch as I'm standing there outside the base. I immediately shove him back like that with rifle. I pointed at this guy. It was like a reflex I didn't even think about. It was the most bizarre thing. Like I'm pretty high strung at this moment. People are trying to kill me, blow me up every day. I point the rifle at this guy after he went to grab me like that. And then I shoved him back, and he was against this HESCO wall at the outside of this base. As soon as that happened, like as I'm looking down the rifle, this guy starts giggling uncontrollably. It's like you could tell immediately he was just high out of his mind, and just is giggling uncontrollably. That's not a normal response if someone's pointing a rifle at you. So I look out of the corner of my eye, and I see my the Afghan commander, and the look on his face, he like immediately panicked. And as he immediately panicked, he reached back and slapped, full five finger slap, slapped my interpreter in the face as hard as he could. So at that point, I'm trying to point my rifle over at that guy and keep him back off of my interpreter. My interpreter is trying to kill this guy. I'm trying to grab the back of my interpreter's vest to keep him from fighting with this commander. I'm yelling at my interpreter to tell him, "Hey, anything he does to you is like he's doing it to me. He's talking through me." The other guy is still giggling uncontrollably. The Afghan commander is like, I don't know, in a rage, like he wants to kill my interpreter. I'm trying to keep him back with rifle. We're right outside the gate. These are people we're supposed to be working with, going on a mission with. I catch out of the corner of my eye the guard tower up on the wall. All of a sudden, now this machine gun at this Afghan army base is pointed at me. Like I'm there. Like, is he getting ready to shoot me or what? I don't know. I immediately call up on my radio. I had my little hand mic at the time, and I call back to my gunner on my truck, and I'm like, "Hey, if you hear any rounds go off, if you hear any gunshots in this place, light this place up." The gunner on my truck, and that's not a normal thing to say either, but I couldn't really explain it in short amount of time. And he just comes back and he says, "Sir, what is going on over there?" And I just responded with, I have no idea. So, lots of shoving, pushing back and forth, shouting back and forth. I quickly realized this is not going to work. We're not going to be able to go on anything here. We need to like avoid getting in a shootout with the Afghan army here at the base. So I grabbed my interpreter like by the scruff of his neck, not scruff of his neck, but like the back of his vest right behind his neck. He's still shouting at their commander, wanting to fight, wanting to fight, and I keep my rifle pointed at that guy, whoever he was, the Afghan commander, and then I start walking slowly backwards. I walk slowly backwards all the way to my patrol, and like basically a Mexican standoff. Like this machine gun in this guard tower is pointed down at me. I'm pointed at their commander, walking backwards with my interpreter. I get back to my truck, and they're like, "Sir, what happened over there?" And I kind of tried to explain the whole thing. And I'm like, "We're not stopping there again." So we load back up, and like it was just me and my interpreter. It was a pretty high stress situation. We went to the next Afghan army post down the road. I took a couple more people with me when I went to link up. And then, they walked out and went on a normal mission with us like there was no concern at all. There was no problem, no issue, and nothing else happened on that mission. Afterwards, I put everything that I just explained here to you guys in my post mission report, that it almost ended in a shootout with the Afghan army, and all I got was, shoulder shrug. That's the way the Afghans are. Yeah, kind of indifference. It was kind of wild that I was that close to being in a shootout like that, and that it was just met with full on indifference. But I guess that's kind of the way it went in general. Um, but yeah, luckily nothing bad happened with that. And anytime I did link ups after that, I didn't go to that specific outpost again. I stopped at other ones and then made sure to bring additional people with me, in case something really bad would happen. But luckily, nothing happened, and it was pretty bizarre. The craziest thing that you know, a story you can't even make up. But later on, you hear stories like they would call them the green on blue attacks, where the Afghans would attack army soldiers on bases and stuff like that. Not surprised ever at all. Like it could totally happen. Our cultures are too different, so I'm not surprised at all. That escalated pretty quickly, and just by a hair, by the skin of my teeth, got out of there without some sort of massive um, international crisis. But that's the way it goes. Donnie, thanks for the question. In general, I won't be talking about military stuff on the channel unless you guys specifically ask, or if it's something later on, maybe you guys want to hear. But in general, people just want to hear about bike riding and stuff like that. So that's what I keep the topic to. So that's all we've got for fan mail. Let's see, anything in the chat? All right. Looks like nothing's in the chat. But yeah, anytime, just so you guys know, I read every comment that I get on my videos. So leave me a comment in the video. if you want to ask anything else, and we'll see where we go from here. But I'm open to continuing Fan Mail Tuesdays. If you guys keep sending in your questions, sending in your letters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys out on the trail.